points when reading a science news report. So here we have a science news report on the supposedly extinct red fox discovered near Yosemite National Park. That's from the Los Angeles Times on September 5th, 2010, so about a year old. And over here we have our mind map. So maybe we have the main idea of this whole article is about the supposedly, can't spell there, extinct red fox. And that's going to be our the whole thing there, and we'll identify our main points, what those are, and maybe map those out as we read the article here. So let's dive on in. I'm going to highlight some words that might be vocabulary. Remember, when you're reading, you want to be highlighting words that you don't know and that you later might be using as your vocabulary. So here we start reading. The genetic signature, maybe we don't know what that means, so we would underline it. The genetic signature of canine slobber on a bait bag of chicken scraps, and a fuzzy photograph snapped by a motion-sensitive camera north of Yosemite National Park have confirmed the existence of a supposedly extinct red fox, the U.S. Forest Service announced this week. The last known sighting of a Sierra Nevada red fox in the Sonora Pass area was sometimes in the 1920s, said Mike Crawley, Bridgeport District Ranger. Needless to say, we are quite surprised and excited by this find. Federal wildlife technicians Emily Crow and Julian Pellegrini were checking hundreds of photographs when they came across an overexposed image taken at 2:17 a.m. on August 11th of what appeared to be the rare red fox with a characteristic white-tipped tail trying to get at the bait bag dangling from a tree. The Sierra red fox, or Vulpes necator, lives at high elevations, eating small mammals and birds. They have a reddish-colored head, back and sides, black backs of the ears, black socks on their feet, and a white-tipped tail. However, the only known population of the Sierra Nevada red fox is a group of roughly 20 animals clinging to survival in the Lassen Peak region, about 150 miles to the north. DNA analysis of saliva from the tooth punctures on the bait bag allowed the UC Davis wildlife genetics researchers Ben Sachs and Mark Statham to make a positive identification. We got back to the Forest Service and said, "Yep, you've got yourself a Sierra Nevada red fox there, and it's distinct from the Lassen Peak population," Sachs said. "It's got a genetic signature that we haven't seen outside of the skulls and skins of museum specimens collected before 1926. Red foxes don't live to be 100 years old, so we're assuming that there are more of them up there," Sachs added. "So we now have two small, isolated populations, and we don't know how big the second group is. That's about as endangered as you can get." On Friday night, federal biologists, UC Davis genetic researchers, and university students began setting up additional monitoring stations and cameras in the area to try to determine the size and the health of the Sonora Pass population. It remains to be seen whether or not the discovery will affect ongoing U.S. Marine Corps training exercises, as well as plans to develop a new snowmobile crossing in the remote area. "It's very unusual to discover a new large animal species," said Forest Service spokeswoman Christy Kalkowski. "In this case, it was like finding a rare jewel in a totally unexpected place." All right, so that's the article, and we've underlined quite a few words. There may be more that you don't know, and maybe you knew some of those. But that would be the process of reading it through the first time. What we need to do now is read this article and figure out what are the main points. Is it something about slobber here? Is it about the chicken scraps? What do we need to do to identify the main points? And So when reading through there, you're really trying to determine what's just a detail and a fact and what are the main points. If we read through here, it seems like most of the article is something about our fox here. All right, what is it that's important about this fox? Well, I think if we look in the first paragraph, it's always a great place to look for some big ideas. And is it that the genetic signature was there? Is it something about the bait bag? Is it the photograph that's the main point? Or are those details? I think when we look at it, a real big idea that comes out is that they thought, the word supposedly means they thought, that a red fox was extinct, that it wasn't alive anymore, but they found out that it's not. That's a pretty big idea. We can find that that really is a big idea that supports even the title of the article, that the fox was thought to be dead and now it's not. So I think one of the main points, if we come over to our mind map, would be that something like scientists thought the red fox was extinct, but have found that it is still surviving, maybe. Okay? There might be other ways of saying that, but something about the idea that it's still, oops, not surviving, survive. Mr. Bryan's having a hard time spelling that. Okay, well, they found out it's still surviving. Okay, so this idea over here that the red fox, okay, is still surviving, it's a big main point. Okay, so we keep reading and we look that they're talking about they haven't seen it since the 1920s. That's not maybe a new point. That supports this idea that they thought it was still extinct. Okay, it's a supporting idea. So over here, that would maybe be support. So not seen since the 1920s. Okay, that would just be a fact that supports that the scientists thought it was gone, not a new main point itself. Okay, we come back over to the article over here. Something about a photograph. Again, is a photograph a main point, or is it supporting the idea that they found a new one? Well, I think it's supporting that they found a new one. It's how they found it, but it's still about the finding of it. Okay, is what the fox looks like a main point? No, not really. It's just kind of a description. So when we come here and read about what the fox looks like, it's not the whole point of the article. Okay, I think when we get down here, we have another big idea, and it's that this fox, there's only a few of them, and they don't know how many there are. That's not about finding it anymore. It's about what's happening and what's going on. So I think we come to another main idea, and that main idea is that scientists do not know how many of the foxes there are. Okay? It's still endangered. Okay? Still very much endangered. They don't know how many there are. That means it's in danger of being extinct. Okay? So then we keep reading, and they say they began setting up new monitoring stations. That's good. That's to tell if it's how endangered it is. It then says it remains to be seen whether or not this discovery will affect the U.S. Marine Corps that train in that area. Okay? I think that's actually a new main point. It's a big idea that not only is the fox not extinct and that we don't know how many there are, we don't know, we might actually need to add a third main point here, that scientists are unsure of the survival of the foxes because their land may be used for whatever, for other things. We might have some main points here about used by the Marine Corps. The Marines might use it, or it might be for snowmobiling. Okay, so for entertainment and things like that. So we've got a lot there, and we want to find the main points. What's really important is not so much that you've said your main points exactly in the right way, but that they're said relatively quickly, not much more than a sentence, and it's not just a list of details and details and details. It's the big things. If I could only say 2 to 3 things about the whole article, it would be these 2 or 3 things. When we come back, we're going to see how to take these main points and how do I turn that into a proper summary.